Yes, it's been a very different scenario here in South Yorkshire compared to Manchester. We've seen, of course, this week in Manchester, negotiations play out publicly, press conferences, Andy Burnham digging in against the government. Here, though, in South Yorkshire, the Mayor, Dan Jarvis, has done a deal quietly behind closed doors. He says he's done the best that he could for the region. Others, though, suggesting that a deal hasn't been agreed at all. It's been imposed.
I haven't got any time to play politics with any of this. I just want to do the right thing for the people that I've been elected to represent.
South Yorkshire Mayor Dan Jarvis has done a deal with the government. Cash for COVID restrictions. £41 million to put the region into Tier 3 lockdown for 28 days. Infection rates have been rising rapidly in the region and are now some of the highest in the country, with 7-day case rates per 100,000 at 402 in Sheffield, 367 in Barnsley, 341 in Rotherham and 285 in Doncaster. Beyond the normal Tier 3 measures that include pub closures and restricted socialising, additional measures just for South Yorkshire will see betting shops, casinos and soft play centres all closed. Gyms will stay open, but classes will stop. But the agreement prompted criticism, with some saying the financial support is simply not enough. The man who agreed it, though, stood by it. Have you been shortchanged?
I've secured the maximum amount of money that I think that I was able to do. But what I said to the Prime Minister when I spoke to him about this is that this is a discussion that will need to continue.
We saw yesterday in Manchester Andy Burnham digging in, saying no, this is not enough. A lot of people in Sheffield will be asking today, why didn't Dan Jarvis do that for us?
Well, what I did was approached it in my own way. I'm elected to serve the people of South Yorkshire, and I've done the very best that I possibly could for them. We are acutely conscious of the fact that our hospital admissions are rising rapidly. The NHS is under huge pressure and winter has not yet bitten.
And after getting a kicking from Manchester's mayor this week, the Prime Minister was full of praise.
Where local leaders step up to the plate. And I was delighted that South Yorkshire came on board this morning. I had a great conversation with Dan Jarvis last night. Where local leadership is shown, we can really make huge progress in getting the R down, and that's the right approach for the country.
But some of South Yorkshire's Labour MPs were less than impressed.
I think what the government's done is to come with a standard package, which they've already given to Merseyside and Lancashire, and the negotiations in South Yorkshire were no more real than they were in the other areas. Government came and said this is what you can have, bit of discussion around the margins, but essentially it's a standard package and it isn't adequate.
Political support came instead from the region's Conservative MPs.
I think it is a fair package. There are further announcements coming out about support for leisure services, and of course if this goes on longer, there will be more support in place, I've no doubt about it.
But the people of Sheffield were sceptical. Do you think there's going to be enough cash to support people through it?
Probably not.
And do you think your mayor should have agreed to them?
Maybe not.
South is south and north is north, and I always believe we come off worse.
Do you think that's going to be enough?
Fingers crossed, but I don't think so.
I don't either.
No.
He may not think it's enough, but it could provide the financial cover South Yorkshire needs to get through the tough few weeks it's facing.
Liz Bates in Sheffield. Well, earlier I spoke to the Conservative MP, Damien Green. He's held several ministerial posts, including First Secretary of State in Theresa May's premiership. He's also chair of the One Nation group of Conservative MPs. I began by asking him whether the government has been in conflict with northern cities.
Looking at the people who've signed deals relatively easily, it includes places like Liverpool and Sheffield, which you don't exactly think of as Tory heartlands. So I think it is perfectly possible for both sides to put political partisanship aside and actually get on with helping people, which is what we want to do. And so the more we have, the more I think, I'm afraid, Manchester feels a bit of an outlier.
Well, why do you think Manchester has proved such a tough nut for central government to crack?
Well, I think it's both ways. That, clearly Andy Burnham has negotiated very hard and got to the point where the negotiations broke down and the government had to impose the Tier 3, which is clearly necessary on medical grounds.
Given what's happening at the moment, the North appears to be pitted against South, one mayor against the other. Do you fear for the future of our country? Do you worry about the echoes of the divisions that we last saw under Margaret Thatcher?
I think if they were there, I would worry about them. But I think what we've discovered over the last 24 hours is that some of, if you like, this morning's rhetoric about North-South in the 1980s and so was a bit overblown. That actually there are people of all political parties in all parts of the country working really hard for their local communities. And obviously it is better for people to work together to find common ground between national and local government, between different parts of the country, because we are all in this together. We're all facing the pandemic. It's a danger to all of us, and we've got to work together to try and beat it.
Why hasn't Andy Burnham got the memo then?
You have to ask Andy Burnham that. I think clearly other Labour mayors in the north did get the memo and are working hard in the interests of their communities. In most parts of the country, what this shows is that the mayoral system is working quite well, that you have got a focus of local or quasi-regional representation that can deal with national government, can put the local voice very, very strongly to ministers in a way that perhaps you didn't have before.
When you've got a dispute over £5 million between Manchester and central government, where does all of this leave the government's levelling up agenda, which is, after all, how Boris Johnson won the last election?
Well, it means that we have to redouble our efforts to make sure that all parts of the country are treated fairly, that these packages that are have been successfully negotiated with many parts of the north of England, and I suspect will be fairly soon in Manchester as well, are seen to work. I think it is clearly very important, as you say, not just politically but socially as well, that the levelling up agenda is successful, because the whole economy is going to be weakened by COVID. That's obvious. The government's having to spend huge amounts of money to keep it going even at the level it is now. All those debts are going to have to be paid back and all of that over the years. But in the meantime, we mustn't lose focus on the idea that we do need to keep levelling up, to keep working on those parts of the countries that have been disadvantaged, in some cases, for generations.
Damien Green, thanks very much.